My name is Deborah Jean Kopczynski Stubers, and I was born in April of 1950 at St. Mary's Hospital. I think it was Our Lady Help of Christians then, I'm not sure, but I think that's what it was. It was the old hospital, and my mom couldn't decide what to name me, so finally before she left the hospital, because I didn't go home with her, they finally decided on a biblical name, Deborah. And so I've always just gone by Debbie. My mom was Ruth Agnew Kopczynski, and my dad was George Kopczynski. And they were married in 1939. And I was the fifth of 7 children. I have 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters, and 2 younger sisters. And so we have had a big family, and my oldest one is Buzz. His real name is George. And I don't know how he got the nickname Buzz, but we've always called him Buzz. My oldest sister is Ruth. Then my brother Ed was the next one, and he passed away a year ago. And then Colleen was the next one. She's 4 years older than me. And then I was born, and then Pat was born 2 years later, and then Becky was born 7 years after me. They lived up by the elevator when I was born. They built that house in, I think, 1939, I think for $2,800, if you could imagine. And I have the papers, and their monthly payments on their house were $23, I think, and 60 cents. This is like unreal. I wouldn't even pay interest on anything now. We had lots of friends. Our house seemed to be Grand Central Station full. Somebody was always there, and Mom loved having everybody over, and she never minded if we had company, and Dad never did either, so it was easy to have company because they didn't ever mind. And the kids that I ran around with didn't ever mind coming to our house. I think some of them might have been scared of my dad, especially boys that asked me out, but other than that, that stands to reason. Then my mom and dad built a motel, which is now the halfway house in Cottonwood, but that was a motel. It had 8 rooms, and then it had kind of an apartment house. There was 4 bedrooms and a big utility room, of course, and then kitchen, dining room, and living room. And then Dad built a big patio with an outside fireplace in the back, and we always had lots to do because the motel was very busy when they first built it. The Air Force was here in Cottonwood, and that's basically why they built it. And so I grew up cleaning motel rooms. Dad knew the man that owned Zim's. He knew him real well, and they wanted Dad to buy it, and Dad almost did. But he didn't buy it because of the schools. And they wanted his kids to go to Catholic schools. And so I went to St. Joseph's School and the academy. I graduated there, and then I went to school in Seattle University for 2.5 years. And then I transferred to the University of Idaho and graduated there. I guess with my mom, probably she always baked, and she always had cookies when we came home from school. She worked, she ran that motel, but just she always baked, and she always was there for us. And Mom told a lot of stories and remembered every poem she ever learned. And she used to be the family entertainment. And I guess with my dad, I loved going on walks with him. He loved to walk, and we'd walk at night a lot. And Dad knew a lot about the stars, and he'd point out all the stars to us kids and tell us which ones were which I wish I would have paid more attention. I know the Big Dipper. And just walking with my dad and the stories he'd tell, and working in the garden. I always worked in the garden with him, I guess. I liked school. I had good teachers, and when I got in high school, of course, that was about the time. Let me think. When I went to high school, um, Ralph was a senior, and I was a freshman when we. And I never. Somebody said, "Well, how did you meet your husband?" I never did meet him. I just knew him. And so he was a senior, and I was a freshman. Of course, I had nothing to do with him. And then, and when I grew up, there was a dance every Saturday night. The JC set dances every Saturday night, and you just didn't miss those dances. And there was a band from Nez Perce, and there was a band from Lewiston. Those were the two most popular bands. But the first dance I ever went to, my uncle's band played. It was called the Modern Airs, and it was horrible music as far as I was concerned. It was old-fashioned for us. In those days, they had hay rides. The Sodality had hay rides every year, a couple times. In fact, the first time Ralph asked me out, I was a senior, and he was at the bowling alley, and I was bowling because Debbie Kuthler had to work, and so I was down there, and he called me up and asked me if I wanted to go to the show, and I was going to a hayride, so that was not a lie. I said, no, I'm going to a hayride tonight. And then he asked me out again, and I said no. And then he asked me out again, and I said no. And my dad was, why don't you go out with him? He's nice. I said, he's old, and I'm not going. You can't make me. So 3 years later, he didn't look so old. It's funny when I started going out with him because my sister was working at the bowling alley, and that's when Mom and Dad lived in that apartment. And she just walked over to work. She probably went in the afternoon or something, and it was 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and Dad said, you take that car over and leave it for her and come back. And Ralph drove by and asked me if I wanted to ride, and that was it. Started going out with him. I remember I had a date with somebody else the next day, and I called him up and lied to him, told him I couldn't go because I was going to go out with Ralph that night. And never went out with anybody else again. And never have been sorry. And so we started dating when I was after my sophomore year in college. I had to go back to Seattle. And so I went back for the first quarter of school, and then I transferred to University of Idaho. And I still had 2 years of school to finish, and I told him I'll never quit school. I will finish because I'm going to get my degree. We got married in July of 1972. Well, we were the second couple, I think, to be married in the church in Cottonwood. Ralph worked on that church. Father Walsh came to him and his dad and brother and asked him if they'd finish it. And so they finished it, and we were one of the first couples married in it, so it was pretty exciting. Our reception was in my mom and dad's yard. They lived in the old Orr house, and we had our reception there. It was an afternoon reception. And it was nice. It was different than what, having it in a hall. It was completely different, very informal, almost like a picnic. But, and my uncle, John Kopczynski, made our wedding cake for us, so that was pretty special. And we got to go over and pick out what we wanted and pick out the top, and then that was our wedding present from him. And so that was really special. And my sister Pat was my maid of honor. And our colors were light green and yellow. Why I picked light green and yellow, I don't know, but they were pretty summery colors. We have 4 children. Our oldest was Craig, and he was born in July 73, just a year after we were married. And then the next one was Heidi, and she was born in May of 75. And then a few years later, Jason came along, in April of 78. And lo and behold, I had Anna in December of 79, and I had two little ones at once. But actually, it was nice because they were very close, and growing up, they played well together. Well, they were all different, all had different personalities. Craig and Heidi were very close in age, 22 months. And so they did everything together. When they were growing up, they would go to out in the field with Ralph or Larry. Ralph's brother would actually come by in his tractor and pick them up and take them for the day. So Craig and Heidi spent most of the time together. They did everything together. And then Jason and Anna did everything together. And Jason and Anna were just a little bit more adventurous. I don't know what Craig and Heidi did because they were usually with Ralph. They went with him all the time. But Jason and Anna were home with me. And one time I looked out here, and it was just dry as a bone, and they had a campfire going. I just about had a heart attack. When they got into middle school, just fought constantly. It was just like sibling rivalry. And somebody asked me why they didn't live in the same dorm down in Boise. I thought, you want World War III to break out? Because they just would argue over silly things, and still do. But they all get along, and they all like to come home. And Jason doesn't have children, but man, he just loves those grandkids, and they all love him. And so we have 3 grandsons and 3 granddaughters from age 8 to almost 20. So I got a degree in teaching. I was a home ec teacher. They don't call it home ec anymore. It's family and consumer science. When I got out of school in May, and we were married in July then, and then the next fall I did my student teaching over in Nespers. But I didn't teach for quite a few years because we had 4 children, and we wanted for me to be able to stay home. And then when I was ready to teach, of course there wasn't any jobs, and so I went back to school and at Lewiston. And most of it I just did correspondence classes, but I did take a couple classes down there. And I got my elementary degree and did student teaching in elementary. But I only had to teach 6 weeks because I had my degree and a certificate. I just needed the experience in elementary. And so I did that. And then when Anna, our youngest, was in 2nd or 3rd grade is when I started teaching. And I taught 2 years in Nespers. And which was nice because I didn't have to leave until after the kids were on the bus. And then I was home before they were at night. And so it was just half time. But the day I interviewed for that job, my gosh, we had no electricity. I couldn't fix my hair. I was just in a panic. Ralph finally went out and got the camp stove and made coffee. Because I was just like, I have got to have coffee. I got to get ready. Can't fix my hair. Can't do anything, And so, but I got the job, and I taught for 2 years over there. And then I taught in Grangeville for 25. And I taught everything from 5th grade through high school. I started in high school in Nespers 2 years, then Grangeville 10 years in high school. Then I went down to 5th grade for 4 years, I think, 4 or 5 years. No, it was middle school. I taught in middle school then for 2 or 3 years, and then I taught 5th grade for 9 years, I think. And then I finished in middle school. And so I taught a lot of different things. I was in a different school district, and so when I left my job and went to things over here, it wasn't parents coming up asking me questions about their kids. Because you do, you see the kid's teacher and you want to know something. So you go up and ask them something. And when I went to all their activities over here, it wasn't like parents wanted to talk to me about anything other than just being friends. And so I liked that part of it. And I left for school about the same time Anna and Jason got on the bus or drove. And then I usually got home. I tried to get home at 3:34, but my mom and dad were older, and so I always stopped there every night. Every night after school, I stopped and had a cup of tea with Mom and visited with them for a while, and then I'd go home. Then we'd go to a basketball game or whatever. It was a busy time in our lives, and don't regret it at all. I just loved 4-H, so I started leading it before the kids were old enough, and then when the kids got old enough, I just helped lead the Green Creek Active Workers for years. The year Anna was a senior, Ralph said, "I'm not leading after this year," and I said, "Oh, I am. I'm going to keep going." And closer it got to the fair, when it got to the fair, I thought, "Oh, I am not leading anymore. I am quitting too. This is too much work at fair time." So, but our kids did well. I mean, and they just really excelled in 4-H. And some people said, "Oh, you do all the work," and well, I don't either. Those girls take their record books to the swimming pool and fill them out during their breaks. Yeah, 4-H was kind of a big thing in our lives. Still is. We like to travel, and we've gone on a couple cruises. I surprised Ralph when he was 62 and gave him a cruise to Alaska, and that was beautiful. Oh, it's just beautiful up there. We went in June, longest day of the year, so very little nighttime, was all daylight. It's strange when you're there, and you think, gosh, I'm kind of getting tired. I wonder what time it is. The sun's still high in the sky. You look at the clock, and it's 1:30 in the morning, and it's time to go to bed, and and then it gets kind of twilighty about 3, and by 4 it's bright. So, and then we won a cruise on that cruise. We won a cruise to Mexico. So the next spring we went on another cruise. That was almost too close together. But we decided between the two we liked Alaska much better. And then after I retired, I had always said my bucket list, top of it, was to go to Ireland. So we went to Ireland for 12 days. And that was, I'd go back there in a minute. It was absolutely beautiful. And we took a tour. We didn't drive. And I think that's the smartest way to go, because somebody had gone to England and they told us, if you drive, all you're doing is driving on the wrong side of the road, hoping you're getting where you're going, and you miss everything. When you're on a tour, you're on a bus, you see it all, you just sit back and enjoy. And we toured all over Ireland. We didn't go to Northern Ireland, which if we went again, we would go into Northern Ireland and over to Scotland. I like to travel. Somebody said, "Well, I would never go there." I said, "I'd go anywhere I haven't been. Something new. I'll find out if I like it or not." I think always remember that family comes first, and always to go see their parents, and hopefully they'll call us. I know my granddaughter that's in college, she calls me every now and then just to say hi, and I just love it, it's really important to me that they remember that family comes first, and your friends are important, but family should be before that. And I think that's really important.